Aren't moms special? Man, wasn't that moving? You have to admit that was moving. There's no way anybody was bored watching that. You're paying attention to all the kids and watching them and the resolve and the commitment that mothers have to see their children. And maybe none of us have been in the Olympics or going to be going to the Olympics, but we can all identify with the commitment that mothers have. And this video is so powerful and emotional. Did you notice all the companies at the end? Tide, Pampers, Gillette, Duracell, Bounty. These are Procter & Gamble companies. Did you notice how Procter & Gamble just pimped your mother to sell toilet paper? Did you catch that? Yeah, they used all the emotions that mothers have, all of the powerful, deep, wonderful things that mothers bring to us, and they said, and now buy laundry detergent. That was their goal. Their goal was to trot out your mother so that you might buy more batteries. And how did they do it? They attacked your emotions. They elicited this deep response, Mom. I mean, everybody's going to catch with that, right? And so this Sunday, we're going to be, and the following week, we're going to be talking about emotions as we are looking to transform and be transformed by God. And so if you can't deal with your emotions, you're going to have problems. You have to deal with how you feel, or you might be taken advantage of. Now, emotions are a gift from God. God has emotions. Did you know that? That's how you have emotions. We were made in God's image, and our emotions reflect God's emotions. It's not abstract thought here. This is reality. God loves and cares. God is wrathful and angry. God is sorrowful and laments, and He has joys and delights, just like we do. He has all the emotions that we have. And the Bible is full of emotions. If you wanted to feel anything, if you wanted to commiserate with any emotion in the Bible, I would tell you to go to the Psalm. There is every emotion represented in the books in the Psalm. So this is Psalm 137, probably not a popular psalm. This is verse 7 and following. Remember, O Lord, against the Edomites, the day of Jerusalem's fall, when they said, tear it down, down to its foundation. O daughter of Babylon, you devastator, happy shall they be who pay you back for what you have done. Happy shall they be when they take your little ones and dash them on the rocks. Did you know that was in the Bible? Happy are they who take your little ones and dash them on the rocks. Not really the kind of thing you expect to hear coming out of a Sunday sermon. But it's there. It's in there. And if you know what Babylon did, they came in and they destroyed Jerusalem, tore down the city, sacked the temple, took all of the stuff with them, took a whole bunch, in fact, the overwhelming majority of the Israelites with them, back to Babylon, raped, killed, murdered, the worst of the worst. So in the Psalms, when it says, happy are they who bash little ones, well, there's a reason for that. That's a reasonable feeling. Somebody just did horrible wrong. Of course they're going to go to God and say, God, get them back. Now, just because you're feeling the emotion doesn't mean that it's a good feeling. Just because you happen to be feeling it doesn't mean that it's right. Just like last week we talked about, just because you had a thought doesn't mean that that thought is the best thought and you should go with that thought. The same way, just because you had a feeling doesn't mean you should continue on with that feeling. In fact, if you don't deal with how you feel, you may be manipulated. The next time you buy laundry detergent, think about your mom. Okay, or, buy whatever one's on sale or works, or for crying out loud, I don't know, whatever way you buy laundry, whatever one works, the idea here is that you should buy and do things not based just because of how you feel. And I don't want to say that feelings are worthless. Don't hear that. I want to tell you that you need to pay attention to how you're feeling, or else you're going to get lost. And one of the biggest ways that this happens is that old nature. This has kind of been the theme underneath the themes for all of our weeks here. Our old nature. Our old nature is that being who we were before we were baptized. And our reading today, Paul puts it like this in Ephesians. Put away your former way of life, your old self. There's a new self. Put away your old self, that corrupt and deluded by its lust, and be renewed in the spirit of your mind. That's baptism. And clothe yourself with a new self created according to the likeness of God and His righteousness and His holiness. That's baptism. That's how we understand our relationship with the world, is that there was a time before we followed God, then there was a time that we're now following Jesus. Does that mean you're perfect? No. It means you're working on it. You need to be transformed. And as you move forward in that relationship, you will be transformed. But we find ourselves going back to the old ways. And it's obvious why. Because it's easy. Because it's easy. Because it's comfortable. Change isn't always the easiest thing, because then you got to learn something new. Anybody have any problems with computers, or is everybody just a perfect whiz with computers? That's usually the one. That's how you can tell how well you are acclimating to change. Does anybody have a flip phone? Come on, I want to see. Somebody's got to have a flip phone in this congregation. There we go. Yeah, Peggy. Yeah. Right. Well, I don't want to throw you out there, Peggy, but you know, the reason we hold on to the things that we hold on to, flip phones or otherwise. Anybody have a VCR? Don't raise your hand. I don't want to do it. No, we don't want to. No, shh. It's because we don't like change. It's hard to change, and it's really easy just to do the things that we have been doing for so long. It makes us comfortable to stay in our old ways. And Jesus tells us, and Paul tells us, and the Spirit moves us to get rid of those old ways and adopt the new ways. And the new ways, I'm telling you, because they're new, are going to be a little more difficult for you to do. But this is what we're told over and over and over at our baptism. Our old ways are drowned, and there's this new being. The thing is, though, when you look at this new way of having to act, it might not be the easiest thing for you to do. You might not feel like it's comfortable. You might not feel like you want to do it. And if it ends up being that you follow your feelings instead of following God and His call, then your feelings have become your God. Overcoming this is just as easy as it is to overcome sin. It looks the exact same. The first is you have to name it. You have to name it. Can you name what it is that sets you off? Can you name what it is that gets you angry or upset or unable to focus on God's calling in your life? I know in my life, my kids just are the thing that get me. And when I focus on what it is, it's not their shenanigans. It's not because they're goofing off. You know what it is? And this was funny. When I was writing this sermon, this was the epiphany that I had. It's because I'm afraid of other people. Right? Their shenanigans are going to cause me to be late. And then someone's going to look at me and say, you see, he doesn't respect me or my time. Or if they're in church and worship and my littlest one all of a sudden gets possessed with some evil demon and he starts screaming at the top of his lungs, right? Then what happens then? Well, then I can't preach because he's screaming, or what if my, guy sitting next to me or my wife or whatever thinks, that family, they can't even control their kids. They're horrible parents, aren't they? Nobody's saying that. Nobody's saying that. In fact, I want to take a second here and let us all recognize that when our little ones among us in our worship setting get possessed by evil demons and start screaming at the top of their head, they can't reflect on their feelings. So we have to give them the benefit of the doubt. And you know what? That means that maybe mom or dad has to take care of that. What if that's on our end? Not mom or dad's end, but the rest of us, we're not going to help the other kids who are hanging around, who are paying attention or playing with whatever. Maybe it's our fault, the rest of us, that we need to pay attention to our feelings and what they're going through. You see, if you're ruled by your feelings, then you're not ruled by the thing that matters. God's kingdom. You're ruled by anything else. So what is the emotion that causes you the most trouble? Could you name it? Is it pride? Are you getting yourself in debt trying to keep up with the Joneses? Maybe it is that you have body issues, and so you get angry and snarky at anybody else because they're able to control this and you can't do anything. Or maybe you have relationship issues. Maybe you get jealous of your spouse talking to other people. And that causes fights in your relationship, and maybe you take that out in other places. Maybe you're overwhelmed with vanity, which is my sin, and you're just totally obsessed with success and how people see you. And so you're going to do everything you can to make sure you succeed, even if that means working on a Sunday or avoiding Bible studies or other things. Or maybe you have insecurities. Maybe you think that your faith is lacking somehow and you can't lead a Bible study, or God didn't call you to the things that maybe you feel called to do, and those insecurities are keeping you at bay from fulfilling who it is God brought you in the world to be. So after you name it, then the next thing is to challenge it. Is this an appropriate feeling? Because sometimes you feel stuff and it is appropriate, and sometimes we feel things and it is inappropriate. One of the best things you can do is have somebody in your life who can tell you that's an appropriate feeling, a small group that you trust or a friend that can actually call you out. Do you have a friend who can call you out? I mean, that has to be a really good friend who can say, hey, look, Pastor Ryan, you are being a schmuck right now. Stop it. That is a big thing, because what happens when somebody calls us out on our stuff? Well, we get defensive and we start telling them why whatever we feel is appropriate. My wife does this to me all the time. I hate it. Who asked you? Now look, your spouse might not be the one who calls you out on that. Relationships are different. But you should have somebody who calls you out on that. Somebody who can say to you, no, you know what, that feeling that you're having right now, that emotion, that is an okay emotion, or maybe that's not an okay emotion. So after you name it, then you challenge it, and then you can tame it. If it's not an okay emotion, then you can do something with it. You have to dismiss it. You have to stay humble, and you have to change it. If your schmuck of a boss comes up to you and gives you a critique that you didn't want to hear, he may be a schmuck of a boss, but maybe he's right. You see, as a pastor, I'm usually the one in people's lives to say the things that are true that people don't want to hear. Your schmuck of a boss, you really want to be wrong, but you know what? Even though his critique was maybe not as well put as it could have been, it was still right. So, okay, then time to change, time to get humble, time to be amicable, time to do with what that is. Or maybe your schmuck of a boss is wrong. Maybe just because you're a woman, all of a sudden he's discounting all the things that you say or do. Well, you know what? He's wrong then. Now you get to be a champion. Now instead of just indignation, you have righteous indignation. You have a cause. These causes that come from our weaknesses, these are the things of the world. This is how ministries happen. When somebody sees an injustice in the world, and usually they're the ones who experience that injustice. And then they go out and they, without feeling like they are so awesome and mighty, expose their weakness and do some greatness. These are people we call saints. See, because if you're a minister and you start a ministry or you do something out of your strength and everybody looks at it and goes, oh yeah, sure, okay, fine, she's good at it. Doesn't really mean much. But if you start a ministry and you're not good at it, and you struggle and you fight and you get good at it, and everybody sees that kind of authenticity rings true. And we all see it when we see it. We know what it is when it is exposed to us. This thing where we name it, and then we challenge it, and then we tame it, is something that we have to do every day, but it's not something we do out of willpower. It's something that we do because we go to God. We pray and we find ourselves in Bible studies and we find ourselves in worship so that we can be transformed, so that our emotions might be moved. If somebody is screaming and yelling at you and telling you all kinds of horrible things, turn the other cheek probably isn't going to pop into your head, which is what Jesus said to do. And even if it does pop in your head, it might not be something you can do, even if you wanted to do it, because it's not something you're readily practicing. So even if you know that you should be kind to this enemy, you can't and won't. Which is a lot like the toothpaste from our children's sermon. Paul says in Galatians, look, if you fill your life with jealousy and envy and hate and anger and loneliness and bitterness and self-centeredness, you know what happens when the world comes at you? You're going to spew back out all of that jealousy and hate and anger and bitterness and loneliness and self-centeredness. Why would you expect any different? When you grab a toothpaste tube, you expect toothpaste to come out of it. It's a weird and unusual thing when you take a tube of toothpaste and spam comes out. Which is why we find ourselves in prayer and Bible studies and worship, so that we might fill ourselves with love and joy and patience and peace and kindness and goodness and faith and gentleness and self-control. These are the things that Paul tells us are the gifts of the Spirit. This is why we're in these Bible studies, this small group studies right now. This is why we worship, so that we might have these things flowing out of us like a fountain, and that others might be rejuvenated at that Spirit's gifts. Because I find when I'm full of myself, almost anything's going to tick me off. But when I'm full of the Spirit, almost nothing can make me mad.